Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to another ESO Guides video with me, Sherman. Today we're going to be talking about the Nightblade class and how you can set it up for your advantage, whatever. And we're going to explain all the skills, all the passive skills, and the Nightblade, you got to understand, doesn't get a lot of beneficial benefits except for critical damage and being a stealthy character. Now, they do make good tanks, they do make good healers, and they make good DPS. So they get an advantage in all three. But they do make great healers, I'm not going to lie. Comparable to the Templar, they are the second best healer in the game. So let's get in here and talk about the Nightblade, starting with the Assassin tree. Now, the Assassin tree is focused mostly on damage, physical damage type stuff. So let's get in and talk about that. First, you get Deathstroke. As your ultimate, ravage an enemy with a spinning attack dealing X damage and increases the damage against them by 20%. So when you do that, the next damage you do is going to be increased by 20%, I believe. So also affects enemy with Major Defile, reducing the effectiveness of their healing by 30%. So this is how you can get Major Defile as a Nightblade. It's really effective against bosses, like I said, especially bosses with major healing. In PvP and Cyrodiil, it helps to do this to a group because it reduces their healing received for 6 seconds. Now, you're not going to be able to fire this off a whole bunch of times because Nightblades don't get reduced costs, but they do get a quick way of gaining ultimate, and we'll get to that later on in the Siphoning tree. So the first morph is Incapacitating Strike, which deals disease damage and stuns the enemy. Now, they do get increased disease, not increased disease damage, but they do get a lot of disease damage based stuff. So it is understandable to put that on your character if you're going to use it on like weapons and stuff to increase your disease damage with the Nightblade, because not only will that disease damage here be increased, but it also be increased through other means as well. But the disease damage is really great because it's kind of like a damage over time, and it can hurt them really bad. Now, Soul Harvest is another really good one because if you kill an enemy, you gain 7 ultimate. So if you kill an enemy, you get 7 ultimate. So this is better to use towards the end of an enemy's life. You can kill them, get that ultimate back. But again, like I said, the damage against the enemy is is increased by 20%. And I think that's for a certain amount of time. I don't, like the 6 seconds, I think that they get that increased damage to them for that 20% during that time frame. So it really helps out, especially against a boss. Next, you have Assassin's Blade, which is a really good ability. I mean, you thrust a magic blade with a lethal precision and stab the enemy dealing X magic damage, deals 300% more damage to a target below 25% health. It's a really good execute, because you can just like blast them with a ton of damage. Now, it does have 2 morphs, Killer Blade and Impale. Now, Killer Blade converts to a stamina ability and deals disease damage, also heals you if the target dies within 2 seconds. So the great thing about this is, if you, like I said, disease damage doesn't do just direct damage, it can also do damage over time. So you have that way of doing extra damage, and to heal yourself. Then you have Impale, allows you to use this ability at range. So instead you throw a blade. So this is better for a ranged person, like a ranged magic caster, to use this, because then you can hit them from range, doing that 300% more damage when they're below 25% health. Next is Teleport Strike. I love to use Teleport Strike even as tank. Oh my god, this is just awesome to use. Flash through the shadows and ambush an enemy dealing X magic damage and stunning them for 2 seconds. If the target is a player, they are briefly snared instead of stunned. So you got those two factors to look into when you're playing in Cyrodiil or versus PvE. Next is you get 2 morphs. One is Lotus Fan, which is a super awesome ability because it snares the target for longer instead of stunning them and deals additional damage over time to the target and nearby enemies. So this does magic damage. Now remember, they do a lot of physical damage as well, but they can get a lot more magic bonus from something else, and we'll get to that later. Ambush is the other morph, and this is a stamina morph. Now what it does, it converts to a stamina ability and grants you Major Empower, increasing the damage of your next attack. Now, the reason Major Empower like the Empower thing is so important is because anytime that you can increase your damage potential, that means the more damage you can push out. So if you did this and then Flurry right afterwards, your Flurry would be increased by 20%. So just to let you know. Next is Blur. Now this is how they survive so well, is they get major evasion at a limited cost. I'm going to say this, it is a very limited cost depending what armor you're in. Now you surround yourself in a phantasmic aura to gain major evasion, increasing your dodge chance by 20%. This means that you don't have to dodge roll to dodge. You can just stand there and you have a chance of dodging, and it lasts for 26 seconds, which is longer than any other effect you can get anywhere else besides wearing medium armor and using evasion from it. So this is a great thing. Now you get two morphs, you get Mirage and you get Double Take. Now Mirage is really good for a tank or as a healer because it also grants you physical and spell resistance. Now as a DPS I wouldn't worry about this too much, that extra spell and physical resistance in a minor way. What I'd be worried about is getting a greater chance of it. Now as a Nightblade you do not get major evasion or major resolve and major ward unless you're wearing heavy armor for a greater amount of time. So you have to use other abilities to get it, and it lasts a really short time. Double Take also grants major expedition for a short period while after activating, increasing your movement speed. This is better for mobile DPS or mobile magic casters. They can move around the battlefield better, they get that major evasion, and they can do a lot more. That means they can cover more ground to do more damage. So it's very beneficial for them to use it versus a tanky person or a healer person. Next you get Mark Target. Now this is my favorite, one of my favorite abilities they get, because it exposes the enemy to weaknesses to afflict them with major fracture and major breach. Now the Nightblade is the only class that can get a 15,000 physical penetration, because if they're wearing Spriggans, they're using sharpened weapons, and they're using this, they can do a lot of damage. A lot of damage to an enemy, because especially against bosses, they can do even more damage. Now you have two morphs, but when a marked enemy dies, you heal yourself for 40% of your max health, and you can only have one target marked at a time. Remember that. You get Piercing Mark as one of your morph. Ability has increased duration, and you can see the target if they use stealth or invisibility. This is great for Cyrodiil. Now the next morph is better for when you're playing in PvE. And if a marked target dies, you heal for more and gain major berserk, increasing your damage done for 5 seconds right afterwards. So if you're in a dungeon or a trial and you're fighting trash, you can mark a target, kill it, mark another target, and that damage that you do to them is going to be 25% more, plus you're going to get that major breach and major fracture. Just remember that. So Mark Target is a really cheap costing ability. Even if you're wearing medium armor, it's a really cheap costing ability. You can hit this multiple times usually. And because of the way the class works, you're also going to get 8% max magic, and we'll get to that later. But so you get a greater magic pool as a Nightblade. Grim Focus, a lot of people don't see the use of this. Now you got to understand, if you can do this and you can pull it off, you can get major berserk and minor berserk at the same time. And you build up momentum to gain minor berserk, increasing your damage done by 8%. While active, hitting an enemy with 4 light attacks or a heavy attack, or heavy attacks, charges this ability into Assassin's Will, allowing you to fire a single shot from a spectral bow at an enemy, dealing X magic damage. Now, a Wood Elf Nightblade, using a poison bow can become very powerful, because they can do 4 light attacks, charging up how much damage they do with their next bow ability. On top of that, they could be charging it up to where they can do that spectral bow, which does gain the same thing. So they get that extra damage when they use it. So they get not only the bow damage, but they also get the spectral bow damage as well. So they get 2 types of increased bow damage. So those are 2 things to understand when using a bow as a Nightblade. Now, you can use this Relentless Focus, which is a really good one too, because it also grants minor endurance, increasing your stamina recovery. The spectral bow deals disease damage, and it's so you get that extra disease damage, which is increased because of physical damage. So you get that choice. Do I want to do magic damage, or do I want to do this? And the next one, the spectral bow deals more damage and snares the enemy. So you got 2 choices here. I would preferably go with this because of the disease damage. and I'd go with this because of the more damage for magic base. If I was like a spellcaster, I'd do 4 light attacks from a distance with my staff, and then get that spectral bow to fire off a big magic damage. Next, you get a Master Assassin, which is a passive, increases your weapon and spell critical while invisible or stealth by 10%. The stun from crouch ability stuns for 100% longer. Now, whenever you're crouched and you attack an enemy out of stealth, you get extra damage. So, and you get a chance to stun them. So it lasts 100% longer when you do it. Next is Executioner. Killing an enemy with an assassination ability restores X Magicka over 6 seconds. Super beneficial because this is another class that works really well as a hybrid, just like the DK and just like the Sword. They work really well as hybrids. Next, you get Pressure Points. This one increases critical strengths and spell critical ratings by 2,629 for each assassination ability slotted. So if you have 2 assassination abilities on each bar, and we'll just say you're running Mirage and Ambush on one bar, and on the other bar, or Mirage and Pierce or Reaper's Mark on one bar, and on the other bar you have Ambush and even one of these, or this up here, you're gonna get that extra critical. And you can stack a lot of critical this way, increasing your critical potential up to almost 100% if you do it right. You have to wear medium armor to get that kind of critical, or you have to be wearing light armor to get that massive critical. Now, with an assassin ability slotted, you get increased damage dealt by critical strikes by 10%. A successful critical hit gives nearby allies minor savagery, increasing their weapon criticals by so much for 20 seconds. That's why I said I like to have one of each in my group, because you get all these benefits off of each other. So they can make really powerful spellcasters and DPS, depending on how you play them, or you can make a really powerful hybrid. Now, the Shadow Tree is their defense tree, and it is a very defensive tree, I'm not going to lie. But let's start with their first thing, which is Consuming Darkness. Now, this is the ultimate. No offense to anyone in the game. This is probably the best ultimate you can get for any group content. Conjure a shadows around you, reducing enemy movement speed by 70% and granting you and your allies major protection, reducing the damage you take by 30%. Low health allies in the target area can activate Hidden Refresh, granting invisibility, increasing their movement speed by 50%, and healing them for so much over 4 seconds. Now, the reason I say it's the ultimate support ability is because damage reduction by 30% reduces the movement speed of enemies by 70%, and then this synergy it has is just incredible. Now, you do have 2 versions of this. You have Bolstering Darkness, which is great for tanks, and then you have Veil of Blades, which is great for DPS. Now, you can have, if your tank is running this, you can drop this, and you don't get the major protection, but you do gain both benefits. So this one gives the tank 30% extra reduced damage. So if a tank's running this, they're going to get 60% damage reduction when this ability's out. Now, they also get the movement speed stuff, they get the reduced movement speed and everything, but this is where the 2 overlapping really helps, because you can cover a greater area with 2 of them. So Veil of Blade, enemies in the area also take damage over time, and it is magic damage, so the greater magic damage you have, the greater damage this does. Now, this thing can hit for a lot of damage depending on how high your magicka is. You can get it to crit hit for about 4k a tick. So it's a very powerful thing, and it lasts for the whole duration that you get that stuff, the 30% and all that, and it's longer than 4 seconds. I forget what the total time is, but it's pretty long. I think it's like 15 seconds that you're doing this damage over time, plus you're giving your group 30% damage reduction. Next is Shadow Cloak. Cloak yourself in a shadow to become invisible for 2.5 seconds. You can increase the duration of this through this tree. Now, you get 2 versions. You get Shadowy Disguise and you get Dark Cloak. Shadowy Disguise grants a critical strike on your next attack. This is great for DPS. Even in dungeons, this is amazing because you hit this and then do an ambush where you stealth in and hit them, and you're going to get that extra critical strike every time. Next is Dark Cloak. Also grants minor protection while invisible when invisibility ends, reducing your damage taken. Now this is great for tanks because if you're in trouble, you can do this, put yourself into cloak, pop yourself out by attacking, and you'll get that 8% damage reduction for 2 seconds. Now that 2 seconds doesn't get increased based on something down below in your passives. Next is Veiled Strikes. Now a lot of people don't really like using Veiled Strikes. I love using Veiled Strikes as a tank. I also like to use it as a stamina DPS. But you slash an enemy for X magic damage. Attacking with Veiled Strikes while stealth or invisible stuns the enemy and sets them off balance for 4 seconds. So coming out of the stealth, I can do that. On top of that, you get 2 more, Surprise Attack and Concealed Weapon. One's Magicka, one is Stamina. Now the Stamina one converts to a Stamina ability, also applies Major Fracture to the enemy, reducing their physical resistance. So you can get Major Fracture on them, with plus having Mark on another enemy. So you can have a Mark on one enemy and Major Fracture on another enemy, and you can hit multiple enemies with that one versus the Reaper's Mark. So you get that greater potential of putting Major Fracture on multiple enemies, doing a lot more damage to them. Concealed Weapon, though, while slotted, your movement speed while stealth or invisibility is increased by 22%. So this really helps out with somebody who's playing a Magicka character. If they're using like Dark Cloak or they're using critical, the Shadowy Disguise, they can use that. Then they can switch to this, or have this slotted, and they can move around it. But they also get that slash as an enemy, and then attacking with Concealed Weapon while stealth or invisibility stuns the enemy and sets them off balance. So you get those 2 things that you can do. Next is Path of Darkness. I love Path of Darkness, and I'll explain why. Creating a corridor deals X magic damage to the enemies in the target area for 1 second. Now this is a path-like thing that you set down in front of you, doing damage over time, and it gives you major expedition no matter what. So it gives you 30% movement speed for 2 seconds. Well, that 2 seconds is going to get increased, and I'll explain that in a minute. Now you got 2 choices here. You got Twisting Path with the path effects area, and it gets a bigger area and it deals more damage. So you get that there. Now I don't know why these people on the wiki can't fix this stuff, but so you get a greater area and it deals more damage. Now the next one is what I use on my Nightblade healer, and that's Refreshing Path. And that's because it doesn't just do damage, it also does a heal over time. And this thing lasts a while. It lasts like 10 seconds, and the path heals you and your allies. So it's a really great thing. Plus, when I use it, I get extra physical and spell resistance. So that's why I use this a lot. Next is Aspect of Terror. Now this is a really great ability to use because summoning a dark spirit to terrify up to 2 enemies, causing them to flee in fear for 4 seconds. Now you got 2 more, Mass Hysteria and Manifestation of Terror. Now Mass Hysteria is a really good one because it doesn't just do that, but it also applies Minor Maim to the enemy when the fear ends, reducing the damage they do. So once you cast this, they get that, and that lasts for 4 seconds afterwards. So it's a really powerful thing to cast on them, because then they can't do as much damage to you and your group. This one creates 2 traps instead, which fear the enemy, then that trigger them. So you can set it down and you can scare off enemies that get near you. Summon Shade is another really great one because it gets Minor Maim as well. It summons a Shade. It's a pet, so when you summon it, it's considered a pet, and it'll fight at your side for 15 seconds. This Shade's attacks deal magic damage and inflict Minor Maim, reducing the damage reducing the enemy's damage by 15% by 4 seconds, and that's for every time they hit. Now you get Dark Shades and you get Shadow Image. Now Dark Shades summons 2 Shades instead of 1, and they both get to apply that Minor Maim. So as long as they're dealing damage to the boss or whatever you're fighting, you're going to constantly be getting that because it lasts for 15 seconds, and that time is increased to 20 seconds when you get a special passive. Next is Shadow Image. Summon a ranged shade instead, which deals more damage, and you can activate the ability again to teleporting. So you can move it around the battlefield, and it fires at ranged. So this is really good for a Magicka-based character fighting with a staff and stuff. They can get some extra damage in there by summoning this and also applying minor maim. It doesn't matter if you're tanking or not. Applying different effects is really beneficial for your group. So it doesn't matter if you're a tank, a DPS, or whatever, but getting that minor maim on there does help your group do that. The next is the passives. You get Refreshing Shadow. Now this is what makes Nightblade so great, is they get increased stamina, health, and Magicka regeneration. Now that's recovery, but it's by 15%. And that means their stamina and Magicka recovery is more active, and they get it more continuously, and it's bigger and everything. So it's crazy. Next, they get Shadow Barrier. Now this is how they get their Major Ward and Major Resolve. If they're not wearing heavy armor, they only get this physical and spell resistance by 2 seconds for each piece of heavy armor they wear. So it's 4 seconds or 6 seconds if you're wearing one piece of heavy. So you do get a greater thing, and it does give you the Major Ward and Major Resolve. So it increases. It's 1 second with the first one, and I think it's like 2 seconds with the first one. I think it's 3 seconds with the second one. So it lasts for 6 seconds for me. Next, you get Dark Vigor. Each slotted shadow ability increases your max health by 3%. So I do run Refreshing Path on my healer, so I get 3% extra health, and that's all I run on my healer. But on my other one, I run both Shadow Disguise and Surprise Attack on 1 bar, so I get that extra health. On 1 bar, I get 3% health, and on the other bar, I get 3% max health. And they're an Argonian, so I get 9% max health added to it, so I get 12% max health on both bars. Using a shadow ability increases duration of shadow abilities by 15%. So that's where you get that extra duration on all your shadow abilities, so the effects last longer. It's a really powerful tree when you build it, when you use it to your advantage. And it's good to get, like I said, it's always good to get all the passives of your class. Next is Siphoning. Now, Siphoning is like the healing tree here, and it does have a lot of healing effect. So your ultimate Soul Shard, ravage enemies with souls with a giant ruin, dealing X magic damage and stunning them for 3.5 seconds. An ally can target an affected enemy and activate Soul Leech to steal X or Z health, so much health. Now you get 2 morphs, Soul Siphon and Soul Tether. Now Soul Siphon heals nearby enemies but deals no damage and no longer stuns. So you can do it, and you'll blast out this huge AoE of health to your allies. It steals their health and then gives it back to your allies. The next one is Soul Tether. Now this one deals additional damage over time to enemies and heals you. This is really great for a tank, because you can put this on the enemy and siphon their health while you're tanking them. So, and it lasts for a decent amount of time. Next is Strife. Now this is the main heal that most Nightblades use, and that's because it does a heal over time, and it does magic damage up front. Now it does have 2 morphs. The first morph is Funnel Health, heals yourself and one nearby ally. I use this on my healer because it doesn't just heal me, it heals them as well, and it gives us a ticking heal for 10 seconds. And one other ally for 25% of the damage inflicted. So we get a heal for 25% of the damage I inflict. The damage that I do with this is anywhere between 8 to 12 to 15k. So they get 25% of that back over 10 seconds. The next one is Swallow Soul. This is really great for a tank. And the reason why is while slotted, you gain minor vitality, increasing your healing received by 8%. It is also great for DPS, because that's a way of getting extra healing received while you're playing the Nightblade class. So it's a really good idea to have this. Now, if I was playing a healer, I'd go with this. If I was playing a tank or DPS, I'd do this. And that's the reason why. Those are just my opinions, though. It is up to you to decide. Next is Agony. Now, this is a super, super powerful ability. I don't care what anyone says. If you have the Magicka, this thing can crank out some serious damage. Shackle an enemy with Torment, disorientating them for 30 seconds and dealing so much magic damage over 5 seconds when the effect ends. So it does damage over time when the effect ends. Now, the damage over time effect has a longer effect with prolonged suffering, or you can take Maleficent Wraith, which deals area of effect when it ends. So you deal an area damage effect instead of the damage up front, or the damage when it ends to just a single target. It does damage to multiple enemies, plus 5% more for each second the target was stunned. So this one gets increased damage on how much they were stunned for, how long they're affected for. So for 30 seconds, they get this shackle doing so much magic damage. When it ends, it blasts out doing 5% more damage, or it does more damage to the enemies around them. So there's a lot of things you need to see with that ability. Now, Cripple is another ability I like to run, because it saps the enemy's agility and bolstering your own, dealing so much magic damage over 8 seconds, and reducing their movement speed by 40%. You also gain Major Expedition, increasing your movement speed by 30%, but you can only have one Cripple active at a time. So you get Debilitate and Crippling Grasp. Now, Debilitate, when you can also put this ability on an unlimited amount of targets, refunding magicka when an enemy dies while affected. So you can hit this with multiple targets and give yourself magicka back. So really good for a magicka-based character, but I run Crippling Grasp because it deals additional damage and it immobilizes the enemy, immobilizes when initially applied. So it immobilizes them for 1.5 seconds and reduces their movement speed by 40%, but it also does this massive amount of damage to them over time. So it's a really powerful effect. Siphoning Strikes is another really great ability because it's a really great resource management ability. You imbue your weapon with soul-stealing power, causing your light and heavy attacks to restore 999 magicka or stamina for 15 seconds. Now, as far as I know, this is going to get the leech things for health and stamina, or for stamina, I think, or magic, or one of the two. So you're going to get this leeching effect in the next update. Now, you get two morphs. You get Leeching Strikes, and you get Siphoning Attacks. Now, Leeching Strikes, what it does is it gives you 3% of your max health back when you toggle it. So it converts to a toggle ability and restores health, but grants a significant weapon damage and spell damage penalty. So you lose 20% of your damage, weapon damage. Well, you can make that up, and I'll show you how you can make up the difference even with the loss. So you can get 238 magicka back, 238 stamina back, and 3% of your max health back when you use Leeching Strikes. Now, it's a really great thing, but it does reduce your weapon damage or spell damage by 20%. I like to use this one, Siphoning Attacks. And the reason I like to use Siphoning Attacks is because all other direct damage attacks, you have a 10% chance to restore an additional 1,999 magicka and stamina. So all other direct damage attacks have a chance to restore additional resources for you. So I like to use this ability. Now, a lot of tanks like to use Leeching Strikes, and I don't blame them, but I prefer using this on my healer and on my DPS character. Now, I don't run it all the time. It just depends on the situation. Now, Power Drain is a really great ability because it does a damage over time, or it does damage up front to the enemy, and it gives you Major Brutality. So if you're up close and you're fighting and you do this, you hit them for magic damage, and then you get that Major Brutality. Now, you get two morphs, a Stamina Morph and a Magicka Morph. Now, the Stamina Morph converts it into a Stamina ability, deals disease damage, and increases the damage done. So you get increased damage with it, and you get the weapon damage as well for 20 seconds. So, and it's stamina based, so you do that disease damage. Like I said, they get a really good effect of disease stuff, but they don't gain a benefit to disease damage. They just get extra disease damage. They're the only class that gets this. So this is a really powerful thing, especially if you're using a melee weapon. So now the next one is really good if you're using if you're playing like a hybrid, or you're using a magicka based character like a healer. Now, it also heals you and your allies and grants you Major Sorcery, increasing your spell damage. And that's why I said they make really great hybrids. Now, I run a Resto Staff on mine. I'm thinking about dropping the Resto Staff and going dual wield, because I can still get a lot of heals out to my allies, and I can run this up front, giving me Major Sorcery and Major Brutality, so I get both weapon damage and spell damage on top of it. So I get this choice of what I want to do, and I can still do some decent weapon damage, but I'm just using the weapons to basically give me extra, magicka, or magic damage, and heals at the same time. If I'm running a Resto Staff, it's really hard to run into a group. I don't want to run into a group, cast the ability run back. It's kind of pointless. So now we're getting into their passives, and as I told you guys, they have a really weird way of getting their ultimate back. They have to drink a potion to get 20 ultimate. Now that's the benefit of them, is because they get that, they also get benefits elsewhere. So they get this 20 ultimate, and then you can get other benefits from other things. Now, activating a siphoning ability also grants 2 ultimate. Now that's transfer. I shouldn't have skipped to it, but we'll go through this thing real quick. So you get Catalyst, which whenever you drink a potion, you get 20 ultimate. You get Magicka Flood, which increases your max Magicka by 8% while a siphoning ability is slotted. So as long as you have a siphoning ability on both bars, you get this. Now I run on my back bar, I run Crippling Grasp, and on my front bar, I run the Funnel Health. And then of course I do have other abilities that I do use from here every once in a while, like I use Sap Essence and I use Siphoning Attacks. So I can get, no matter what, I will always have that 8%. Next, you get Soul Cipher, increases the effectiveness of your healing done by 3% for each siphoning ability slotted. So that's why I do run 2 siphoning abilities per bar now. I always run this on one bar, along with this, and then I run usually Crippling Grasp and Siphoning Attacks. Or I run Crippling Grasp and Sap Essence. I run one of the 2. Now, because of that, I get 6% healing done. So what? I get 6% healing done increase. So then all I have to do is put so many points into my champion points under Blessed to give me more healing received. Or I can go get the Mundus Stone that gives me 10% healing received, or I can use healing weapons. There's a lot of things I can do to give me, or a healing traded weapon, to give me increased healing. But I don't need a massive healing, I need more critical healing. So that way I get better heals off this character. Now, activating a siphoning ability also grants 2 ultimate. This effect has a 4-second cooldown. So every 4 seconds I can get 2 ultimate by using one of these abilities. Now, I use this ability a lot. And because of that, I get a lot of heals. Or I get a lot of ultimate. Because I use this ability a lot, I get a lot of ultimates. Because I use these other abilities a lot, I get a lot of ultimate. Now, I don't use a lot of assassination abilities on my character. I only run 2. And I run Mirage on one bar, and I run Reaper's Mark on the other. So I do get that benefit, the benefits here, with killing an enemy with an assassination ability restores Magicka over 6 seconds. Because they're marked with Reaper's Mark, I get that. And then I also get this thing with the critical strikes. So that's the reason why I do that. I get this extra spell critical and this extra, critical strike damage, or critical strike on top of that. So I always have one of these on each bar. I have Mirage on my back bar, and I have Reaper's Mark on my front bar, giving me those effects. And then I always run a Shadow ability. I always have this on both bars, no matter what. And then I also run Refreshing Path, or this ability, depending on which character I'm playing. Now, I run this ability because while slotted, I get increased movement speed. Or I run one of these down here, like the Shade or something. Now, I should run this one, to be honest, because that way I can summon 2 Shades and apply Minor Maim, and reducing the damage that my group takes, and it would probably be more beneficial. So I can have Refreshing Path on one bar and the other one on the other. Now you're going, that's 5 slots. What do you do with your healing stuff? I only use it for damage and restoring Magicka. That's it. I don't use any of the healing staff abilities very often, because I can get away with so much more with this. And that's why I'm debating on switching to dual wield, or switching to even just a one-handed sword, because then I can utilize my weapon for just one thing, increasing my spell damage, and that's it. Because that's all I need to do. I'm not worried about doing extra weapon damage. I'm worried about doing extra spell damage. So I get all these extra benefits because I have these things on my bar, and that's why I play my healer that way. And I played my healer that way for a long time until I got into groups. And then I realized that using a resto staff did help quite a bit, because I could apply the same thing I get from Mirage to my group. But I like having Mirage on my character, so I get that 20% dodge chance. So, but yeah, these are the Nightblade is a really amazing hybrid character, because you get so many different benefits from both stamina and Magicka, and they're the only class that get that many benefits, that many stamina morphs. So how you decide to play them is up to you. And that's the end of the classes, guys. I've explained all the classes and told you what their abilities do for you and how you can use them in different ways and with different setups. Now, if you guys did enjoy this video, please hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can hit the subscription button. Now, I will say this before I let you guys go. Classes are just an extension of what your character can do, okay? Your weapons and your armor are another extension. And that's why in the next 2 videos I'm going to be doing weapons and armor and how they affect you in what you choose to use. So keep an eye out for those videos. Those videos will be coming out tomorrow. These are all coming out, the classes videos all came out on Sunday, and then I'm doing the weapons and armor videos on Monday, and then the following day I'm going to be bringing you guys another video talking about equipment sets and how they affect you as a player, and how you can kind of come up with your own unique setup. And I have nothing against the meta, guys, I really don't, but I want people to see that just playing the meta doesn't make you a good player, because you're necessarily not playing the character the way you want to play them. And then the meta is a good place to go and look at people's builds and say, hey, you know what, I like their concept, but I think I'm going to do this a little differently, giving me this stuff. So that's just one of the benefits. Now, as I said again, all these things I'm doing, these guides, are just there for informational purposes. I'm not forcing you to play anyway. I'm not going to tell you how to play. I'm just giving you examples of things that you can do. So it's up to you to decide on how you play. But unfortunately, that's it, guys. So until next time, have a great day or a great week, and I will see you guys later. Bye.